Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Saturday morning to you all. Hope you guys are having a fantastic start to your weekend. Got you an update on what's going to happen weather-wise for today. And then, of course, we're going to give you the revised information from overnight on what's going on with this Arctic air moving through next week, which we know the Arctic air is coming in. We know the very cold air is coming in just in time for Christmas and will dominate the air mass for Christmas time, maybe a few days afterwards. What we are starting to focus a little bit more on now, and we will continue to focus in a lot more on the next several days coming up, is a big time storm system that is most likely going to move through the central and eastern U.S., especially maybe a few days before Christmas. Not really maybe, it's likely going to happen. The big question is who's going to see rain, who's going to see snow. I can almost guarantee you a lot of folks are going to see a white Christmas, but that maybe don't always see it. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say you're going to have some white Christmas for areas in the deep south. I'm not saying that, but we're going to talk about some things. We're going to talk about the pattern change in the beginning part of the video, and then we're going to talk about what's going to happen specifically for today in the second half of the video. So really quickly, thank y'all for the amazing support. The growth has been awesome. I really appreciate you guys supporting my hobby and supporting my passion and just having an audience to talk about what I love. What I truly love and care about, and I really appreciate you guys. I really do. I always want to throw that out there. If not every video, but at least every other video. But hit me up on Twitter if you guys haven't. Facebook, both great ways to stay up to date, especially Twitter. I'm not trying to promote the mess out of my Twitter, but listen, I'm telling you, when we get very active, I get very active. And of course, I can't make a video every single hour, and it's just a great way to follow along. It is. But I know more people have Facebook over Twitter. But if you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. It goes a long way, and I really appreciate it. If you guys got anything that I can pray about, not only will I pray over it, but others will too. And it's a great way to look out for one another and, more importantly, glorify God. So let's get rolling this morning. So really quickly, not really quickly, but, compared to last night's video, we're going to go over some information on what it's looking like with this Arctic air mass moving in, and then talk about the storm chances. So nothing has changed if you watched last night's video, which I dropped pretty late. Sorry about that. But, got to enjoy time with my kids during these Christmas times, and not just Christmas, but, you don't get these times back. I got a 5- and 7-year-old little girl, and we checked out some Christmas lights, ate some pizza. It was a fun night. So I'll be at you at a pretty normal time tonight, so just letting you know. But 6 to 10 day temperature outlook. This was issued yesterday. We know it's going to be cold. We know this. I've showed you this many times. Below average temperatures, well below average temperature. I'm talking about 20 to 30 to maybe 35 degrees below the temperature for this for the normal temperature for this time of the year. There's pretty much, you might as well say that 100% chance of it being colder than average because the Arctic air mass is moving down. The 8 to 14 day temperature outlook. This is the 24th, Christmas Eve, through the 30th, almost to New Year's Eve. I can go on and tell you guys, I think the cold, at least somewhat colder than average temperatures, will dominate the rest of the year. Now, as we get past Christmas to the 27th to 28th time frame onward, it's not going to be as cold as what we're about to see the middle to latter part of this coming work week. But I can tell you, it's still going to be pretty cold, and the pattern is still going to be favorable for the potential for a storm system. So let's talk about what's going on. We're going to have to back this up a little bit. But here we go. We'll start this off the evening of the 19th. What you can see here is you have the cold air building in areas of Canada, in Western Canada. What you see here is a little bit of a moderation in the temperatures ahead of this cold air mass. I would take advantage of this. I'm not saying this is going to be well above average temperatures ahead of this Arctic air mass, but around average to maybe slightly above average. Just enjoy it. Enjoy it, get some things done, because when this cold air settles in, it'll be settled in more than likely for at least 4 to as much as 7 days, depending on where you live. But as we move forward here, we're getting into next Wednesday morning, the morning of the official first day of winter, the 21st. Cold air begins to drop into the northern plains. The ridge begins to build. What you see here in these blue, think of that as below average temperatures. Lower heights, which stands for basically troughing a cold front or either a low pressure. In this case, this is a gigantic trough, an Arctic boundary. Ridge begins to build, which means it's pumping the heights out west, which means above average temperatures in the western U.S. It's probably going to be a warm Christmas for areas like L.A. and San Francisco. So this Arctic front begins to drop down as we get into the morning of the 22nd. And then Arctic air mass begins to unleash across the Midwest and surrounding regions. This begins to drop. We get to the morning of the 23rd, and this is when the Arctic boundary begins to make its way all the way across the eastern seaboard. And then you got the ridge out west, but you really need this ridge, and we'll talk about that here in a second, to really build tall and then steep. So any kind of pieces of energy that flies across this boundary, this trough digging here, which by the way, the storm track will be like this, due to the fact that this trough is pushing down the southern jet down here, we need this ridge to basically be very tall and steep so pieces of energy can dig a lot further, so more areas further south could see snow if you're a winter weather fan and a fan of snow. Right now, indications don't show that, but stay with me. But this troughing continues, colder than average temperatures. When I say troughing, think of that as a cold front. But we get into Christmas Eve, below average temperatures dominate the east, and then as we're getting into about the 27th, 28th, temperatures begin to moderate somewhat. As far as how cold it can be, we'll start this the morning of the 22nd. Arctic front has already pushed through. Arctic air mass already settled in. For the Dakotas, Nebraska, get ready. It's going to be very cold. 20, 25 degrees below zero for low temperatures in these areas. This is getting into Kansas, getting into Oklahoma. Oklahoma City, you might wake up to the teens. But Dallas, you might only wake up to the 30s and 40s. But then throughout the day, probably Thursday, give or take several hours, maybe give or take a time of the day, if you will, the Arctic air mass begins to move through. And then by the time, you get into the evening hours in Dallas, it might be in the 20s. But you might wake up and it's in the 30s and 40s. So this continues to move through. We'll get all the way to Friday morning of the 23rd. And then check this out. Look at this air mass. It's probably going to be below zero in Chicago. You got below 0 degree readings into areas of the Ohio Valley, single digits all the way into Tennessee, Kentucky, northern Arkansas, and then 12 degrees showing up north of Birmingham, single digits all the way into northern areas of Alabama and Mississippi. Now, we don't know if it's going to be this cold. This might moderate some, but what I can tell you is this is the European ensembles. This isn't one operational run. This is an ensemble run, so it's pretty reliable. So this blast through, by the time we're getting into the evening, this is the evening of the 23rd, making the last second preparations. Whatever you got to do, whether you're in Jacksonville, Florida, or up to Chicago, Illinois, it's going to be very, very cold, very chilly. This makes its way through, and by the time we're waking up Christmas Eve morning, doing any last-second things, hanging out with family, bitterly cold temperatures, all the way from Texas to the Carolinas to the Northeast to the Ohio Valley to the Midwest. Find where your state is, and you see some numbers. That's about around where the temperatures are going to be. And then we get into the around midday Christmas Eve. This is high, almost around high temperatures, probably a little bit warmer. This is midday. Of course, your high temperature occurs in the afternoon hours. But, you don't get above freezing, I don't think, for northern Alabama, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, northern Georgia, areas of the Carolinas, points north. You are locked into below freezing temperatures. And then we're getting into Christmas morning and just a very, very cold air mass. I think the coldest morning will be Christmas Eve morning, but we'll see. And then this is daytime highs for Christmas Day. Look how cold this is. Only in the 30s for the south, and then only in the teens for the Ohio Valley. Very, very, very cold, folks. It really is. So as far as the storm system, one thing we'll watch this first system around the 19th to the 20th. The cold air hasn't really settled in for areas pretty far south, but this is for about midday Monday. You could see some rain-snow mix in areas of Arkansas. This is just one run, though. But I really think if you're in like Kansas City, this could drop a few inches of snow several days before Christmas. This moves through, and this is just the beginning. Kansas City to St. Louis area, you could get hit again. Low pressure taking a favorable track, and if you actually look at the NAM wants to show some wintry mischief around Atlanta, things like that. But it's hard to believe that yet. We got to get some support for some other models. But low pressure flies through the Gulf of Mexico. Pretty favorable track, even for areas further south. But the cold air, as we're getting into the 20th, has not really dropped in yet. You got cold air up here in the Ohio Valley. But this looks like a very chilly rain for areas of Atlanta to Columbia to Charlotte. Very, very chilly rain. But we'll see how this is. We'll see how it goes. But unfortunately, one thing I'll say about this first little system, even though I'm not really calling this the first system. It's kind of like a teaser event. I would not be surprised if certain areas in like Tennessee, the mountains of North Carolina and Tennessee, see some snow activity from this. I would not be surprised at all. And some sleet mixed in with this, maybe some flurries. I wouldn't be surprised. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we get to it. Cold air begins to drop down. You see energy already associated with this Arctic front right here. See all the snow in Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, southern Minnesota. And then this drops down into Missouri, Illinois, Arkansas, Oklahoma, the panhandle of Texas. And I know you're thinking, well, it looks like a lot of snow, but it doesn't look very heavy. Well, there's going to be so much cold air, guys, that it's going to be incredible snowfall ratios, meaning it can be just light to moderate snow, and it's going to probably accumulate on everything just due to the fact that this is snow falling in very cold temperatures. So this is when it gets tricky right here, about midday, and if you're ever confused, and I'm really bad about this, about mentioning time frames, about what time frame we're at, look up here. There's always going to be a little bit of a time stamp up here. This is basically, don't focus too much on Zulu time, the 18Z. Focus on that date. We're about midday of the 22nd. This is when it gets tricky. You get a little bit of a low pressure that fires off along the eastern U.S. Could be cold enough for a little bit of snow for Washington, D.C., northern areas of VA. Quickly turns to rain, obviously, here with just whatever this energy is. You're basically having a low pressure pretty much plow into this area. But it gets weird. It gets very weird. The GFS is weird. I'll show you the European also. The GFS is really wanting to stick to its guns with snow all the way down to Dallas for the evening of the 22nd. It shows snow in the northern Mississippi, Arkansas, Memphis, to Nashville, Tennessee, basically the central to eastern half of Kentucky, the Ohio Valley, getting a pretty much a snowstorm just before, a couple days before Christmas. But this little first piece of energy that shoots off before this low pressure down here is very odd to figure out. It's very tough. But this moves through, could provide a burst of snow for New York City. But one thing I want to note, guys, this is just one model run. We're still about 5 to 6 days out. This is going to change a lot. But what you're seeing here is two different impulses of moisture and just a large piece of energy. And this brings some heavy snow into the Northeast, interior areas of the Northeast, too warm for areas like New York City to Boston. And then, but look here, you got rain changing the snow for even areas of northern Alabama. Basically, what I can tell you is areas west of the Alps, the Appalachian Mountains, basically this area right here needs to pay attention on the wintry side of things. Because a lot of times if you're west of the Alps, you guys are a lot more favorable for this moisture, this cold chasing moisture kind of deal. Once you get east of the Alps, like Charlotte to Columbia, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., basically this entire area right here, it's not quite as favorable for these kind of events. But Arctic air mass dropping down, if you were to take this as gospel, as if this is going to happen, it's snowing in the middle of the night of the 22nd to 23rd, still snowing in Nashville the morning of the 23rd, snowing in the mountains of Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, snowing in all of Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, snowing in Pittsburgh, and then this moves through, but it's just not favorable for the I-95 corridor from Raleigh all the way up to Boston. But as this whips through, all bets are off with this. I really think you're going to have some backside moisture with this, but how far south does it make it? But this moves through and wants to show a lot of backside moisture in North Carolina. I don't know if we're going to see this much, but has the moisture changed into a little bit of evening snow for the evening of the 23rd. But, we got to watch this. These models are going to flip back and forth, but I can tell you the system behind it, we got to watch. Now, remember I kept telling you about the watch kind of the 26th to 27th time frame. Well, now the GFS is kind of showing it, but it doesn't dig the energy enough. It really doesn't. I talked about the Fort Max. I talked about that a little bit last night, but it doesn't really dig it enough. There's not enough cold air involved. But if I were to take it out to Christmas morning, the GFS wants to show snow falling for Huntsville, Atlanta, Nashville, then Knoxville, Chattanooga, Christmas morning. But this is going to change. Now, this is getting into past 7. This is about 8 days out. So this is really going to change. This is a really, really questionable storm. The first storm is questionable enough, but this little energy behind it could turn around and drop snow Christmas morning for everybody. But then it gets kind of sheared out, and then the rest is history. But there's going to be a lot of pieces of energy flying around. There really is, guys. You know, another low pressure pops off the 27th with a little bit of cold air around. So we certainly got to figure out what's going to happen with the first one before the second. But I think the models are struggling on what they want to latch onto. Let's talk about the Euro. Same thing with the Euro. About midday the 19th, you could have some snow falling for Kansas City. We get, watch, here comes the Arctic boundary right here. Look at all the snow. This would be snow falling in very cold temperatures, the teens, the 20s. This drops down. Rain changes to snow very quickly for Kansas City, and then into St. Louis. It's snowing very heavily in St. Louis for the afternoon of the 22nd. Here's the time frame right here. It comes one little impulse, one little low pressure that flies through. This would bring snow for like Chicago. And then we were to keep this going. Look at this rain, changing the snow in western Tennessee, Arkansas, the tri-states region right here, western Kentucky, Illinois. Heavy rain changing to heavy snow. We go on and flip to the eastern U.S. with the same time frame. And look at all this rain. Just boring old rain for areas of the entire eastern U.S. as this Arctic boundary tries to catch up with all this moisture that we're seeing for the evening of the 22nd. We get until around Friday morning. Well, let's stop it in the middle of the night of the 22nd to the 23rd. So this is right in the middle of the night next Thursday night. Look at this rain changing the snow. As far south as Birmingham, Alabama, Nashville. This is rain changing to a heavy burst of snow with cold air ushering in. But remember, this just does not work out very well east of the Alps. We really need another low pressure to pop off right down here after this Arctic air moves in or along it. But we need to keep this going. Switches rain to heavy snow for Pittsburgh. It kind of reminds me of almost a Christmas Eve, Christmas kind of event of 2 years ago where we had the Arctic front come through, switch rain to snow for Cleveland, Pittsburgh, West Virginia. But look at all this snow. Another just kind of a secondary low back here, throwing a lot of snow for the northern Midwest up here. And just you know, you got backside flurries down to Atlanta. Tricky event. And then this races forward and just a lot of backside moisture. But then you watch with that system behind it. We're getting into Christmas Eve. At this point, this is low. Basically dumped a good bit of snow for this entire portion of the country, even all the way down to Nashville, Tennessee. And then you watch behind it. What happens after it? The Euro really wants to kind of reinforce the cold air down here, but you're starting to get to the afternoon of Christmas, and you got a little piece of energy right here, but you're waiting for that Gulf moisture to pop off something. You're showing something right here. Well, I'm sorry, this is a little ahead of time. You're showing something right here for the evening of the 26th. There's energy right here. You're just not seeing it. So we look at the ensembles, and here it is. Here's that first system. And here's the real true first system. That first system's like the appetizer. Okay? And then we take it all the way through. Basically, the morning of the 26th. We'll stop it. Pretty solid signal if you're in Kansas City to if you're in Kansas City to St. Louis and surrounding areas, Omaha. For maybe at least a few inches of snow, at least. You look into the eastern U.S. with the same kind of signal, and we'll take it all the way out to about the morning of the 27th. You got a signal showing up kind of far south into the areas of the northern deep south. Solid signal once you get into Tennessee and North Carolina. Points north, all bets are off. There's still a question. You still got a solid signal into the I-95 corridor, but we got a long ways to go. We're going to get the windshield wipers of the models, so we got to figure this out, guys. But the ensembles for the European, same kind of deal. Shows that signal for the appetizer. We drop it down here, and we just got to watch this. We do, guys. But we'll get more detail tonight. Let's talk about what could happen for today. Let's switch it for today. Winter storm warning still up for the Northeast. Winter weather advisories. You're going to have a lot of mood flakes flying around, if you will, with some lake effect snow in western counties of Michigan. But the winter storm warning still up for these areas. A lot of snow still falling. Will continue to do so. We'll talk about the southeast first. Not a lot going on. Some showers can make its way into southeast Louisiana down here. And then more scattered rain in Florida. Maybe some storms possibly south of Tampa, but nothing severe or anything, guys. But you notice the flurries showing up in areas of Kentucky. We'll talk about that here in a second. The Northeast, snowstorm still rages on. Maybe we'll flip to a little bit of snow in Boston. If you haven't already, we'll take a look at the radar out of Boston. Right now, I'm not getting any reports, but let me know if you're in the Boston area, if you're seeing some rain changing to snow in that region. But snowstorm will continue throughout the morning and afternoon hours in Maine. But then one thing I want to show you guys is the lake effect snow machine. Already kicking off Lake Erie. We'll do so off Lake Ontario also. But we'll back it up here. And we'll go through the morning hours, get through the afternoon hours. Look at all these snow showers breaking containment also. Getting into Pennsylvania. Binghamton might see some snow showers flying around. Ohio, snow showers flying around. Northern Kentucky. And, but if you're just south of Buffalo, over a foot of snow could certainly fall. And we'll talk about that in here in a second. But certainly a pretty powerful lake effect snow event that's going to go on south of Buffalo today. And check it out. Several inches of snow will fall. Over a foot just south of Buffalo. So, I can tell you a lot of people are going to see that white Christmas regardless this year. It's going to be a lot different from the years past. You talk about the south central U.S., not really a lot to talk about. It really isn't. Pretty quiet weather. Enjoy it because the Arctic front will be coming and it won't be so enjoyable to go outside, even in this area of the country as we get later into next week. But my folks up here in the northern plains, the Great Lakes region, certainly going to be a festive day as far as just a lot of snow flying around. If you're on the eastern shores of Lake Michigan, lake effect snow will be flying around. Even, in the UP of Michigan, areas of northern Wisconsin, a lot of flakes flying around. Even all the way into Indiana, Ohio, northern Kentucky. If you're out and about doing things throughout the afternoon, throughout the evening hours, some flakes flying around that area too. But lake effect snow event starts to kick off, but not a huge event, but several inches of snow can fall, or will likely fall in the western counties of Michigan today, and this is getting into the afternoon. And then as we get into the evening areas, watch out in the UP of Michigan. Some snow squalls begin to fire off the southern shores of Lake Superior. But, we talk about the snow showers, the Ohio Valley today. Certainly going to see them. I don't think it's going to be a big deal. Just some mood flakes flying around just in time for Christmas. But watch out for some snow squall activity, snow showers, not really squalls, but just some snow showers in Indiana, Ohio. And then as we get into later this evening, into the overnight hours, these can make it all the way into eastern Kentucky. So watch out for that. Not a whole lot of snow showing up for this, but you can tell just trace amounts. Maybe some areas could coat the grass maybe a little bit, maybe coat the roofs of your car, but not a whole lot. But you look up here in the in areas of the Great Lakes, you see several inches of snow could fall. In these areas, Grand Rapids, we'll see a few inches of snow this afternoon, and then you see a little bit of snow showing up in areas of Wisconsin. But temperatures today, the only really true warm area will be in the eastern South Carolina, southeast Georgia, and Florida. But, even that's not even that chilly. But a chilly day for everybody else. Some areas in the Ohio Valley, in Tennessee, will struggle to get out in the 30s. And then, very cold already in the Midwest. But this isn't even nothing compared to what we're going to see. But single digits for high temperatures in the Dakotas. But, that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. I'll be with you guys this evening. God bless all of y'all. And have yourselves a great Saturday.